Hello, everyone. And get the PowerPoint deck up here.
Hello, everyone.
All right. Thank you all so much for joining us. We are going to be talking today about navigating transitions. We are very familiar with this topic, and I'm sure if you're in this room, you are as well. So managing change is difficult, and then you layer your career on top of that, and it can get really murky. So today we're going to talk about how to do all of that with confidence. So we'll introduce ourselves so you know who's talking at you today. Talking with you towards the end, we'll be doing a Q&A. And then we're going to talk about the difference between change and transitions and the neuroscience that happens behind both of those things. We're going to give you some actual help and some advice on how to handle that both in your personal life, but also in your career. And then we're going to open it up to Q&A. And we've got some great questions that came in through our enrollment. But we'll also open that up. So if you do have questions, there's going to be like a little Q&A spot at the very bottom of our meeting. Don't hesitate to add that in there. And then at the very end, if you are interested in coaching, we will have a special offer for you. So if that's something as you're going through this and you're like, I want to talk to one of these gals, make sure you stay to the end so that you can get that offer. And if for any reason you are going through this and you're like, oh my gosh, my friend so-and-so really needs to see this, just so you know, this will be going up on our YouTube page within 24 hours, and you can share that link out with your friends, your family, or if you've missed any of our other free webinars, those are also on our YouTube page. We're coming into the YouTube era here at Talent Career Coaching. So let's go ahead and get started. Tatiana, do you want to introduce yourself? And then I'll introduce myself.
Yeah, I'm happy to. Hi, everyone. I'm Tatiana. So I'm one of the coaches with Talent Career Coaching. I've just worked in HR for a very long time. I've worked with people for a very, very long time. And I'm a constant in my life is to show up and kind of help people navigate what's happening. Transition is a really, really important topic near and dear to my heart. We will see that we all going through it all the time. And so I'm really just very excited to talk about this with you all today.
Awesome. And then I'm Brandi. I'm the owner and the face behind Talent Career Coaching. I love helping barrier breakers. So most of my clients are going to be women or people from marginalized communities that really want to do something impactful with their career, but aren't really sure about what those next steps might look like. So sometimes it's figuring out what you want to do when you wake up in the morning. And sometimes it's, hey, I'm getting my first leadership position. Help me be the best leader possible. So we are both here to help you along with other coaches that we've got here under the TCC brand. We've got someone here to help navigate if you are stuck in any way, shape, or form with your career. So what does talent career coaching do? We help go-getters reimagine their careers so they can do work they love, get paid what they're worth, and positively impact the world. Every single coach that works here is very passionate about making sure that people are being able to utilize their strengths effectively and get paid for utilizing those. I personally believe that if you are satisfied with your work, that is going to transition out into your community. You are a person who has a job, but you also maybe have a family, you're a neighbor, insert 1,000 different labels here. And if your work is impactful for you, that is just going to go ahead and bleed over into every other area. And that's what I'm here to help change. And I think most of our coaches would say the same. We do serve clients across the US and Canada. We also occasionally work with clients in Europe. Tatiana speaks French. And I also have managed teams in the UK. It's not something that we advertise, but we do get a lot of people actually moving from the UK into the United States wanting to find work as well. We do coach one-on-one, and then we also work with organizations, and we do speaking engagements. If you've been on our LinkedIn recently, I've had a couple this last week. So if you are from one of those speaking engagements and you have an email into me, I promise I will get to it this afternoon. I am just a little underwater. So, navigating all the transitions and change that we're going to talk about. And then we help you through all of your career stages. So careers are not just, I want to find the job that works for me. There are so many elements within that that we help and support. So the biggest thing you should know here at Talent Career Coaching, we provide education, encouragement, and partnership. There should never be a time that you leave one of our interactions and don't feel like you've learned something new. That is core at what we do here. And I hope today you get to do that exact same thing. So uh, we're going to go ahead and just transition into the conversation part of this presentation. And then at the end, we'll tell you a little bit more about what's next for our next free webinar and get you some really fun discount codes. So, Tatiana, today we
Yeah,
want to talk about change and transitions. And I
yeah.
read your recent blog post. We all post blogs on our free resources tab. And there was one quote that really stood out to me. And if you see me looking down, it's because I'm reading it because I loved it so much. It's the only constant in life is change, and it happens fast. But transitions, those take their sweet time. So tell me, what's the difference between a change and a transition?
Yeah, actually, I smiled earlier. You were talking about wanting to get to your emails this afternoon and that you were in transition, right? So I think you provide a beautiful example in the conversation of change versus transition. And honestly, from a vernacular standpoint, these can be interchangeable, but for the conversation today, we're going to create a distinction with this notion of change happens is the one thing that happens. It's kind of happen fast. It's like that one event. In your case, if you don't mind, I'm going to use your
Yeah,
personal example where you became a mom, you had a baby,
sure did.
right? So that happened once, and maybe will happen more times later in life, but currently your first baby is here. So that's what we will call change for the purpose of the discussion. Then what we will call transition is actually you became a mom, might be the wrong terminology. You had a baby. The transition is you're becoming a mom. You are actually learning your job as a mom. You are absolutely going through all of those motions of that transition. And so let's really use transition as the aftermath of the change, of really the morphing of whatever situation we're going to into what the new reality is. So change one time, transition longer period of time for our conversation today. And yeah, change happened fast, and then the transition take their sweet, sweet time. We we can see that both a change or a transition can be facilitated if you want, um, with slightly different tools. Right,
Okay.
there are some tools, and then we will get to that in a little bit. If you have sat with us during those webinars in the past, you know that I am madly in love with neuroscience. I didn't know how to say it differently. I love neuroscience. I feel that it explains so much. It really gives us, the brain is a beautiful, beautiful thing, and it gives us information. So if we consider change and transition, we should know that there are actually really three things that are into play in our brain when something like this happens. So the first one is the what's called the basal ganglia, and it's this part of the brain where routine lives. It's the part of the brain that when we've got something down, we're very familiar with it. It's like we store it in the special place that is the basal ganglion, and that helps run the autopilot. It really using minimal energy. We've all had an experience similar to I'm driving to the office and I am there and I don't remember at all what happened on the way because I'm so familiar with the route. I am so familiar with what's happening, right? This is like sometimes it's a little scary.
Happened an hour ago. It's fine.
Yeah, you're like, oh my God, was I danger on this on the road? It's likely you were not, but you were on autopilot. Another example I love is doing a work task that you really like and that you're really comfortable with. Being the nerd I am, it's running a report and looking at some data on an Excel document. It is a very safe space for me. I just love doing that because I enter that relaxing space of my brain. Then we have, so that's for the basal ganglia, the routine part. Then we have the prefrontal cortex. That part of our brain is where the problem solving lives, is where the decision making happens. And turns out that when we are in a new situation, the basal ganglia, it doesn't exist because the routine doesn't exist, and it's everything is in the prefrontal cortex, where we are all about learning the new situation. We have to think about every single little piece of the problem. If we take the driving to work, you might not know the route yet. You might leave 20 minutes earlier than you would because you don't know what you're going to meet on the road. You don't want to be late, so you don't know where you're going to park, and all of these things suddenly start taking place in that prefrontal cortex. It is an energy suck.
Mhm.
So I think that's something I really want to emphasize in our conversation today. Those transition, those new situations, we are tired when those happen, and there is a reason. It is legit. You're valid in being tired in a new position because your prefrontal cortex is sucking everything out of you. And then the third piece of the brain that is at play in transition is the amygdala. We know the amygdala as the reptilian brain. It's the survival brain, and it's the one that will kick us in flight, fight, or freeze mode. Um, it's also our good friend that can be activated when we start a new situation and when our friend the imposter syndrome shows up. I don't know if you're familiar with that. I know
Very.
I am. And we will talk about it, right, Brandi? We have a
Yeah.
webinar coming up on the imposter syndrome that I'm so excited about. But anyway, so the amygdala is being triggered. So if we think about this whole notion of change and transition, there's a lot taking place, and there's a lot of reasons why we get overwhelmed, why there is a lot happening during those transitions. I said a lot of words, I said a lot of things. What's on your mind right now, Brandi, when you hear all of this?
Oh, I mean, the brain is just so fascinating how it works. So, what you're telling me is when there's a change happening, at least for me, it feels like I can get kind of excited about, like, oh, there's something new. But then this whole notion of like getting really tired in that transition, like, I'll be honest, I'm feeling that now. It's like I came back to work from maternity leave realistically at the beginning of the year, and now I'm like, I should have this figured out by now, and I don't have it figured out, and I'm wiped out. Like, what's going on? Like, why is that? Can you tell me a little bit more about what's going on there?
Yeah, absolutely. So, if you don't mind, we're gonna shift from having a new baby because that is the ultimate change transition because your
Yeah.
baby is gonna sleep and then not sleep, and so you're in this for the long run, and it might be scary for some people to talk about this. But if we take this into getting a new job,
Yeah.
okay, let's transition. So you have your new job. You're excited about the new job, but it's likely you want to do really well. You're wondering what your co-workers are going to think about you. You have an urge to demonstrate that they didn't make a mistake hiring you. And then you have all of the small things like, where is the bathroom? I need sticky notes. If that's it, if you're in the office, and then if you're working from home, there's still a learning curve that is happening. So, and while you're going through that learning curve, that's that prefrontal cortex that is activated, right? You really want to know, you want to make sure everything is, you try to control, we try to control things while we can. And so it's all of this is heightened And until you have found a new rhythm, until you have found like really where the bathroom is, where the sticky notes are, what your tasks, your daily tasks and your weekly and monthly tasks are, you're going to go through that motion, plus the interaction with other humans where you start becoming developing rapport, and then you start having actually been able to talk to one another as you know each other, right? So
Yeah.
it's a lot happening at once. And so what happens is the biggest thing is give ourselves time to experience those new things until they can be stored into the safe place that is the basal ganglia.
Yeah.
But what it means is we are in a transition that can be a month, 2 months, 3 months, a full year. I had a boss who would say, when you get a new job, it's going to take you a full year to get your feet under yourself. So what can we do during that period of heightened times to help manage?
Yeah.
And
Well,
so that's a big question. Mhm.
I just actually dropped a resource in the chat. So on our website, under our free resources page, we have a my first year as a new hire. And so it gives you just kind of some benchmarks if you are somebody that's about to transition into a new job of like what to expect month 1 through 3, what to expect month 3 through 6, what to expect since 6 through 12. So really like building that foundation months 1 through 3, right? Finding the bathroom. um Months 3 through 6 really starting to connect and getting out of that like survival mode and connecting with your team, and then 6 through 12, that's when I actually would really want to see you starting to add a small amount of value. I'm not saying anything off the charts, because you still are learning a lot, but being able to kind of give back to that team. I can't tell you how many times I work with clients that get the new job and within 2 weeks they're frustrated because they're like, I'm not giving back to the team and I feel like they won't like me. And I'm like, whoo, let's take a break. And exactly what you're saying is, it makes sense. It's all science with the brain of like why it takes longer than we think to get to that place.
Yeah. It's giving ourselves some grace and really, for me at least, understanding that this is physiological. I am not a slacker. I am not crazy. I mean, I am just somebody who is wired a certain way, and that wiring will allow me to navigate some change in transitions a certain way. I know people who thrive with change, and they are so good at change, and they like it so much that they kind of never enter the transition phase. They get possibly bored.
That's probably me, honestly.
So there is we are all different. What I'm trying to drive here is really recognizing that as we approach any type of situation, we have a reaction to it, and be aware of that reaction, taking a moment to really observe what's happening. That is not an excuse. You were talking about some people wanting everything to happen. That is not an excuse to avoid the situation. That is not an excuse to actually withdraw or retreat completely and say, like, okay, fine, it's never going to happen. But it's really more of an explanation of what could be happening with you in the change. And then we can talk a little bit about what we can do about it. But before we go there, Brandi, I really would love to, because we've talked about getting a new job, we've talked about becoming a mom, but I know from you and your experience talking with people, what are other change transition we can see in people's career? I know I have some ideas, but I'm curious to hear what you think.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is, there's going to be planned change and transition and there's unplanned. And I actually would be really interested, earlier this week I spoke at a job seekers group. And one of the things that came out of that conversation was this idea of grieving through this change process. So I'm going to talk a little bit
Mm.
about sometimes I see planned transitions, but when we get to the unplanned, I would love to get your thoughts on that, because that was something that really kind of took me by surprise on Monday when someone mentioned like, I feel like I'm grieving, and I'm like, oh, we need to talk about
Mm.
that piece too. But plan transition. So when I think about clients that I've worked with, we're talking about people who are getting a new job, and there is some element of work that went into that. So whether that's job searching, whether that's an interview process, versus just like a sudden change in requirements. Promotions, likely you've been working towards that. It's been ongoing conversations. There's been some like motion happening. Maybe it's a family change because family changes do impact our work life, or even retirement, right? As you prepare for retirement, those are the moments when it's like, okay, I'm starting to line things up to make sure that when I go into retirement, I have a solid plan ahead of me. Unplanned stuff, health changes. So if you, our health is a gift and it can change drastically. So those kinds of things can, whether that's an accident that happens or something more, serious, that can be a really unplanned quick change that impacts a lot of things. Layoffs, mergers and acquisitions, that can be something that's more sudden. Or change in leadership. Your role may not have changed, but the influence of the that people have around you may be impacting your role, and so therefore your role has changed without actually ever moving seats, if you will. Um, on the unplanned portion, actually, the gal that was talking about this on Monday, her parents are aging and are needing more care. And so she's having to go from a full-time role to a part-time role. And that has been a really abrupt change. And Tatiana,
Yeah.
I see you nodding because I know that you have walked this road.
Yeah.
There is an unplanned change often with that as well. And she was like, I feel like I'm grieving my career because, life is requiring me to make a shift. Is it normal for that to happen? And I would love to get kind of your thoughts. Is that part of the
Yeah.
process?
I think we could have a full workshop on grief in the workplace, right? Beyond well, yeah, we grieve things all the time, although we don't necessarily label it that way. It makes sense that this person, if they, depending also on the weight they would put in their career, and maybe they had really big plans about taking their career a certain way, and then their persona as a career person was the forefront, and now they have to take it possibly in the back seat and bring the daughter role in the forefront. And those shifts, those transitions require saying goodbye to something. I mean, even a positive change like a promotion, hopefully it's a positive thing, right? Even a positive transition to a promotion requires some grieving,
Yeah.
even if we don't call it, like, I have to grieve the fact that I know my former role really, really, really well. I might be grieving saying goodbye to some coworkers and now becoming possibly their leader. So all these moments of saying goodbye to something is a potential grieving process. And then some people grieve really easily, breathe through it, and some people need a moment of integration. And in that moment of integration, our society does not allow
Mm,
for that moment of pause.
yeah.
You talked about mergers and acquisition, for example, or changing in leadership. I mean, no company will come out and say, okay, we just sprung a huge change for you here, so take 2 weeks to recover from that. That doesn't happen. So we kind of have to create that space for ourselves. Nobody is going to.
Yeah.
And I know it's easier said than done. But so that to go back to your question of grieving, it is a real thing. It is something that nothing to be ashamed of. This is a normal process. And the earlier we can actually accept that we are in that state, the easier, more smoothly we can come out of it. It's the fighting the state that would probably make it more difficult.
Absolutely. Out of curiosity, I mean, I feel like I've heard people go through this same kind of thing while they're job searching. I never really put the two together, but I think there's also that change in transition timeline when you're job searching, right? In the beginning, it's exciting. It's like, oh, I'm going to find this new thing. I'm going to pull all my resources together. And then as time goes on and you start getting into that, like the cycle just keeps repeating and there's no actionable moving forward yet. Does that
Yeah.
also happen, with that
Well,
moment?
it would make sense that it happens too. So with something that is more difficult potentially because people might not land interviews or they get to interviews but they don't get the job. There is this high and low that's happening, and that can be also exhausting, and there might be self-esteem layers
Mm.
starting to creep in. And I think that when those moments of more a lull or more of depression in the process happens, that's when being able to go back to the basics of being okay, this is where I am today. I am not going to be in that space forever. I did not get that job. Giving time to say it sucks.
Yeah.
I'm sad. And that's okay. And I will be able to come back out of it. But some people have been looking for a job for a very long time and it doesn't happen. And you know that better than anyone. It can be really a mood breaker.
Yeah. So on that note, I mean, we've talked about kind of like the brain science of all of this, what it can feel like from an emotional standpoint when you might be encountering this in your career. Now, my big thing is always like, how can we help our people? So
Yeah,
tell me, what tips,
yeah,
what tricks do you have? What have you found that works to kind of help people through these times of
yeah,
change?
yeah. Um, I am not going to be the most popular person on the call right now. Uh, so in those big period of change, when you know you're exhausted, when you know a lot of your energy is diverted towards something new or something like a job search that is taking so much out of you, it is really go back to basics. And I am not saying this, it's sleep. If you landed a brand new job, you know your frontal lobe is going to be on overdrive for probably weeks. Sleep. If you usually function on 7 hours of sleep, plan on 8 or 9 hours of sleep, right? Or six. Increase, make sleep a priority. Eat healthy. Drink your water
Oh,
and
not
move.
coffee all day long? Cool. Uh-huh.
I mean, that could get in the way
I've
of
got
your
water too. We're
sleep.
good. We're good.
Yeah, okay. Um, Eat healthy, move your body. Move your body. That is, and I know the last one, if you have a practice of meditating or mindfulness, make sure you maintain this. What we see very often, and I'm sure everybody on the call, I'm ready to bet everybody on the call has experienced this. You work out, you sleep well, you eat healthy, you meditate every day, you're on a roll, that's awesome. And then the period of stress increases. And then that's when you stop going to the gym, you stop meditating, and you start shoving whatever food you can find because you cannot be bothered to cook. And it is so counterproductive. So I implore anyone on the call, if you're going through a big transition, prioritize those things. That means you might have to say goodbye to something on your calendar that is not like a social call that you're kind of ambivalent about it. Say no to it. Remove things from your calendar. Make space for that period of transition. So important. But not don't make space by not going to the gym or not meditating, if that makes sense.
Yeah, makes complete
Um,
sense.
and then support system, friends, coworkers. Hopefully, depending on the situation, you have other people who are going through the same thing. So find some people to help you navigate. You know, I will sound biased, but hiring a coach is a really good idea. That's what we do. We're here to support people in period of transition. And then a last tool that I personally love, and then I want to hear what ideas you have, Brandy. One thing I love is called the brain dump. I don't know if people are familiar with it. Is at the end of the day, you have a journal, and you just literally dump everything you have in your head, all the things, all the to-dos, all of the thoughts. You really take all of this thing and you put it on paper. It requires a little practice, but especially when our brains are being utilized so much, it's just really good to get it out. And actually, you might realize that there is not much going on. It just feels like it's buzzing up here.
Yeah, I use the brain dump actually quite a bit. I actually take mine, kind of transitioning into like some of the things that I do. I do the brain dump. So if you ever look at my calendar, like if Elise is on this call and she's my project manager, she always sees this little blocking that's like end of the day wrap up and it's 30 minutes. And that's where I brain dump literally everything onto a piece of paper. And I'm like, this is all the things that I need to do, personal work, my dog, whatever. And then I take a sticky note and I do what's called like my top three list. I've already done mine for today, but it's this idea of what are three very small tasks that I know when I come in the next day that I can take care of. And it's not big things, right, that are going to take hours, but just like even it's like, okay, I need to get back to this particular email. I know that that's really mission critical. Or like today it was unload all of the stuff from the speaking engagements that have been sitting on the floor behind me. So it takes 5 to 10 minutes, but it's like those are like mission critical no matter what happens. Those are the three things that I'm going to get done the next day. Because the reality is like especially right now, I'm in a stage of transition, like I mentioned, and it's like I need something that allows me to have consistency because consistency is key. That's where that growth really starts to happen. The other thing I kind of laughed and I was like, yeah, I do thrive in change. But one of the things I struggle with is asking for support. This chapter
Yeah.
of my life, Tatiana, I have had
Yeah.
to really learn like ask for what I need because and people want to help, right? So one of the things that I've done at this time is I actually hired a house cleaner because the reality was every time I had to clean my house, I was angry and nobody needs that in their life. So Blanca is amazing. She's the most wonderful human. She loves my son. It's great. And I don't have to worry. It's just like that thing that like used to just take up so much negative energy and like put me in a funk. It's gone. And yes, it's like a financial investment, but it gives me so much room for so many other things at this point. So that's been really helpful. Childcare it has made it
Yeah.
possible for me to be a working mom. Shout out to our nanny Lily and my in-laws.
Yeah.
Um, and then the last one is just like be kind to yourself because we are our own worst enemies. I know for a fact that my self-talk is probably harsher than anyone would ever talk to me. So it's just that idea of like, be kind, be gentle where you can. Try to remind yourself that when you're having those negative thoughts, maybe there's something in there that like it's showing you something that you want to be different, but it doesn't mean we have to be cruel to ourselves. So I try to like when I'm in those, spaces to just think like, okay, what is this showing me? What is it that I'm wanting to see different or what do I want to change rather than it being like I'm the worst.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I really love the three things to accomplish every day, right? I'm sure people have heard the expression, how does one eat an elephant?
mm,
One bite at a time. And I know those recommendations we are providing in this webinar are things that people have really heard before, likely heard before, and it's very important. I really want to validate people to say what transition can suck. They can be really painful. They can be easy, but no matter what, the transition might mean that you cannot function the way you functioned yesterday. And so give yourself grace and really chunk out what is doable for you. Keep moving.
yeah.
Even if it's those three small things at a time, but keep moving. It's okay to do small things.
We've got about,
Time check. Yeah. Do we
yeah, let's
have
see about,
some questions? I
we
think we.
do.
Mhm.
So for those of you that are on the call, I'm like looking here. If you've got any questions, there's a little Q&A box down at the bottom. But I'm gonna just start with some of the questions that we got from those who registered. Um, let's start with this one. Are there any recommended tools or resources for tracking personal growth during a career transition? Any thoughts there from your side?
Mhm. Yeah, I love this question so, so much. Um, I think in an ideal world, you have some objectives, and then you keep track of those objectives and you go back. Journaling, I'm somebody who doesn't journal, yet I wish I journaled because that's a really good way to go back to actually witness what you have done and what has accomplished. But tracking growth, tracking any type of movement starts with where are you today in the beginning and where do you want to go?
Yeah.
Right. And so if you have not done the moment of stopping and say, I want to XYZ, it's like punching in the dark. So I would say you really start by stopping, identifying what your goals are, and then you go from there.
Yeah.
From what your experience, Brandi, how would you respond?
I mean, so there's a couple things that I use. I'm the kind of person that's like, I'm gonna get my head into the game and I'm gonna just keep moving forward, keep moving forward. And I'm really bad about pausing and being like, oh, this thing happened and it's
Mhm.
really cool. So I have really tried to take a couple moments at the end of each week to be like, what was my biggest accomplishment from this week? And if it's something that truly, I mean, so I led a breakout session at a conference last week for 700 people. It was the biggest one I've ever done. And yeah, I'm like, I'm pretty proud of myself. So I'm getting myself a facial on Saturday. But those are the kinds of things where it's like, I'm really trying to force myself to be like, oh, in the moments that I'm really proud, what can I do to like take a moment to give myself that, like, you did the thing that you said 10 years ago you were going to do, you know? The other one I have actually here in the office is a bulletin board. And anytime I get a positive email or I get a certification, anything that's like, progress, I'm one of those people who prints it out and I cut it out, but it's that moment for me to like be grateful for the opportunity and then I post it to that board. So on the days when it's hard, that's where I look to get my like,
That's a beautiful practice. Like, what is going to be your personal way to pat yourself in the back?
yeah,
And it can be buying yourself flower, whatever it looks like, but tracking it and tracking, having some ways to remember those moments of progress. And progress can be so small. That's also
yeah.
the other thing, is giving some identifying what progress would look like beforehand.
Yeah, and if you're actively working and doing either bi-yearly or yearly performance reviews, when I worked in corporate, I had this little folder. At one point, it was a smiley face. At one point, it was the praise folder. But anytime I got an email about something that I had done that was like really positive, I would dump it in there because at least if you're like me, a year later, I don't remember that tiny little project where I helped that other team and it was really big for them, but it was just like, oh yeah, I'm just helping somebody out, you know? So being able to go back and reflect on those during my performance reviews, again, like that is that career growth and like giving yourself the accolades that you deserve as you go through the moments. Um, what about this one? How can individuals balance the need for persistence with knowing when to pivot or adjust their career goals during a lengthy transition?
Say it again.
So, how can individuals balance the need for persistence with knowing when to pivot or adjust their career goals during a lengthy transition? So, I think what this person's saying is like, at what point I've been persistent through this really long transition. Is it time for me to pivot into something else or to adjust my goal versus like stay the course? Any ideas about how to balance those two things?
There is um there is a quote from Einstein that says something like, what brought me here Like, I'm not going to solve a problem with what brought the problem. I'm totally butchering that quote, but it's really this notion of, if I want to get to a different answer, a different goal, a different solution, I cannot behave the way I have behaved so far. So if we go back to the conversation about the goal, if the goal is to land a job, a specific job, and I've been taking step A, B, C to get to that particular job, and I've been at it for a month and I'm not going anywhere, then my inclination as a coach would be, okay, what's getting in the way? What can we do differently? Are there some lens? Is there something we should consider doing, approaching from a different angle? But if the transition is still moving forward in the direction of the goal I want, maybe the question would be like, do you have a different time frame in mind? And then should you do something to change the time frame? But if you're still heading in the right direction, there would be questions like, is it really worth shaking it? So I think it's in my mind is the current behavior serving you or not? Are you
Yeah.
getting to where you want or not? And that's probably a longer conversation than this.
Yeah, and I would just say on, number one, I love that. I think that's a really great reflection tool. The other thing that I have found with clients is when we start getting to the point during a lengthy transition, and I'm looking at this, I know the person who submitted this, so I have a feeling it has to do with job searching, right? And you've been in it for a while and it's that long transition. One of the questions I always ask my clients is, what is your why, right? Why are you pursuing this goal?
Yep.
Because what I have sometimes found is that individuals, when they're trying to pursue a goal that is being um, pushed onto them from outside forces, whatever that might look like, and it's not authentic to who they are, it's going to be a grind. It's going to be a much more of an uphill battle than doing it the way that you, like that little voice inside of you tells you to go. So if that's you and you're fighting that like internal voice, I would really recommend like taking the time to quiet yourself, quiet your mind, and just listen to that voice and see what it might look like if you tapped into that versus what you think is the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Um,
It's so true. We should probably do a full workshop on finding the why. Um, because it kind of all starts there.
oh, 100%.
It kind
Yeah.
of, okay, yeah, so absolutely.
I could go on a whole thing even with my own business of like things don't fall into place until I start doing them the way that I know feels right to myself
Yeah.
for my clients. And then it's amazing how quickly things start turning around. Um,
Absolutely,
I
absolutely.
I literally have a sticky note from my own coach that says I'm not in corporate anymore. I get to make my own rules. And I'm just reminding myself of that, of like, I don't have to do it the way it's always been told that I have to do it. I get to do it my way. So,
I
nanner.
love it. I'm doing a time check, Brandi. I think we are
Yep. I was just going to say,
getting
let's go ahead
close.
and kind of wrap up here for just a second. So let me go ahead and share this real quick. So what's next from us here at Talent Career Coaching? April 16th, we're going to be coming right back at you with a entire presentation on imposter syndrome and understanding our value for a successful job search. So imposter syndrome rears its ugly head during the job search and many other times in our career, but the job search is where I really see it come to fruition. So April 16th, please join me 11:30 a.m. I'll be talking about that. May 8th, Ruthie will be back with us, leveraging ChatGPT for a smarter, more effective job search. We have been testing a lot of things on the back end with ChatGPT on how to actually utilize it effectively and not just kind of send you spinning in circles. And then June 4th, building job search resilience with a positive mindset. We often see during the summer is when there can be some lag. People are on vacation, it's sunny outside, all of those things. So really trying to make sure you're maintaining that resilience and positive mindset. So that based on the questions we got today, I think might be a really interesting one for those individuals that submitted those questions. And then lastly, as a thank you for being here, if you're interested, we do have a buy one, get one half off offer for you. You just scan this QR code. It's $100 savings. So you can get two 60-minute coaching sessions for $100 off. If that's something that you feel like is would be beneficial to you, we're here to help. So Tatiana's here, I'm here, and then we've got a couple other coaches as well. So you can use that for anybody on our coaching team. Yeah, so that's all we've got for you here today. If you want to share this with somebody, please do. We'll be sending out the recording. And then we will also be posting it to our YouTube channel. There's also all of our other webinars on the YouTube channel as well. So if you're like, I've got a lot more to listen to, well, we've got content for you. Tatiana, thank you. I know that you have
Thank
been
you.
so excited about this topic, and it's so needed, in so many different areas of our lives, but in our careers, especially. So I love that you geek out over the brain, and I love that you always bring that for us. So thank you.
Yes, thank you. I love our conversations always, and I really hope this was helpful for the audience today.
Awesome. Jen, we see you in the comments. Thank you. If you do have any questions, you can always reach out to us, support@talentcareercoaching.com or info@talentcareercoaching.com, or you can find us on social media, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, I don't all of them. We're there. We're there. So come find us. We'd love to chat with you if you've got any questions. But if not, we are sending you a big hug. It sounds like if you're on this call, you're probably navigating some form of a transition. So we're sending our thoughts your way because it can be a
Yeah.
long
And
journey.
be kind to yourself. Be
Yeah,
kind to yourself.
absolutely. All right. Enjoy your afternoon, everyone. And hopefully we'll see you next month.
Take care, everyone. Bye.